Welcome to our performance of Nora's Lost, followed by our panel discussion. We are incredibly honored to perform for you this morning and thrilled to be learning more about dementia. Thank you to Tom Sicca for allowing this event to happen, and to all of our classroom teachers and students who took the initiative to be a vital part of this important performance and discussion. And the only thing I would say to you is that in honor of any family who has had to deal with dementia, that this audience becomes the very best audience for those who've had to deal with dementia past, present, and in the future. Today we'll start with a performance of Nora's Lost, which is the production that our CHS Drama Club will be taking to the Regional Theater Festival and Competition on March the 10th. Immediately after this morning's show, we will take a short 4 to 5 minute break. During that time, please feel free to talk and discuss with people around you what you liked about it, any emotions you may have experienced, questions you may have. This will give our cast an opportunity to leave the stage, put things away, and then they're going to come join you in the audience to listen to this panel discussion. As you leave today, there will be flyers and information in the lobby. Please feel free to take those. And then finally, if you or any other CH students, faculty and parents who would like to attend our only public performance of Nora's Lost, please consider joining us on Thursday, March the 8th at 7 o'clock. Tickets are $5 and are available in the music office or at the door. Again, thank you for attending, and now I'm incredibly honored to introduce the Concord High School Drama Club and their performance of Nora's Lost.
Nora, Martha's gone.
Gone? Where?
We don't know. She must have been sleepwalking. We don't know. She's not in her tent. We have to go find her. Put on your coat, Nora. It's cold tonight. Come on.
Where is she?
We don't know. That's why we have to go find her.
It's cold. She's scared.
That's why we have to hurry. Come on.
Robin, did you borrow my gloves?
No.
Well, have you seen them, the red ones?
I don't know where they are. Take mine.
Yours are too slippery for driving.
Mom, where are you going?
Well, I've got a couple errands to run, and then I thought I'd go and see Nora.
Okay.
You want to come?
I'll pass.
She's your grandmother, you know.
I know.
She might appreciate a visit every now and then.
I want to watch the show.
What show? You're just switching channels. Come on. Come with me. Let's go see Nora.
Mom, why?
Because I'm your mother, and she's my mother, and you should get to know her.
Get to know her? Mom, she hardly even recognizes me. Or you. She can hardly even talk.
I wish I could say that you were wrong. All right, I'll see you in a couple hours.
Bye.
She's a person, you know.
Who?
Nora. She married your grandfather. She used to teach high school. She used to make Halloween costumes for us kids. Oh, I remember this one time she and Dad took us camping and they thought I was lost, but...
Mom, what's the matter?
You've only ever known her as this babbling, embarrassing old lady who takes her dress off in public if you don't watch her close enough. She wasn't always like that, Robin.
Do you need me to go with you?
Never mind.
I can.
It's fine. I just feel guilty, I guess. I'm all right.
You can tell her I said hi.
Okay.
I'm coming!
I got you! No, you didn't!
Mark! Mama, behind me! Come and find me! Martha!
They hung him in a tree.
Our Father, which art...
I love the ocean. The smell of it, the sound of it, the mystery of it.
It is something, all right.
The sea is calm tonight. The tide is full. The moon lies fair upon the straits of the French coast. The light gleams.
is gone.
Nora, what are you looking at? I hate to tell you this, hun, but it's not night, and that is not France.
It's from a poem, Dover Beach by Matthew Arnold. I'm memorizing it.
That for one of your classes? I could never do that.
We studied it in class. I'm memorizing it because I love it.
That's my college gal. How can you even stand to be around a dummy like me?
I
Mama, somebody's at the door. Mama!
Come see my treehouse, Mom. Come see.
Mama, I want to be a ballerina cat.
Nora, we need to go soon.
Mama, I don't like the tail.
It's all right.
Doesn't look like a panther tail. That's the kind of tail I want.
It's a good tale.
It has to be round. This one is flat. It's too flat, Mama. I want a round tail. Can't you make me a round one?
I'll try.
Can't you? Mama!
We'll find her, Mama. I'll help.
It's when your mother and your father and all of your friends never get to see you, or hold you, or talk to you.
Because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. The carriage held but just ourselves and immortality. We slowly drove. Miss Blodgett, I can't remember this.
I'll build us a cottage right next to the ocean, Nora.
Jean.
I'm not so smart with my mind. I can't recite any poetry. Half the time I can't even come up with normal words, much less all those flowery ones you use.
It's all right.
I can use my hands, though.
Don't feel
Damn it,
so
Nora. It's crazy and all, but I love you. And if you'll have me, if you think you could be happy enough with me...
Yes,
You mean you will?
I love you too.
Did you hear that, everybody? Did you hear that, you out there in the sailboat? This woman is going to be my wife. Listen, ocean, meet Nora Blodgett.
I don't know why you can wear a pair of pants more than once, Mark. What do you do when them look perfectly clean to me?
Ma,
I should have you do your own laundry. You're certainly old enough.
Ma,
Maybe you want to toss everything you wear for 3
Ma.
seconds to the hammer. What, Mark?
I got the letter.
What's left?
I've been drafted.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it
stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And bless Mama and Daddy and the kitty, and please bless that it snows pretty soon. I don't want to bless Mark. He won't let me in his treehouse. All right, bless Mark, but please don't bless his dumb treehouse. You're going to Canada.
Nora, Dad, you have to tell her.
Gee, we have to mark to Canada. We'll leave first thing in the morning.
Nora.
We're not that far from the border. Do you know who left us papers? I think that's all we need. Do you have yours,
Ma,
Jane?
Nora, stop now. Stop for a minute.
I'll take them up there myself if you can't find your papers.
Ma, I'm going.
I know you're going. Of course you're going.
Not to Canada.
Yes, he is.
But Ma, I've been drafted. It's my duty to go.
You're just a boy. You don't know what you're saying.
I'm 18 years old, Ma.
I am your mother, and I am telling you, you are not going to Vietnam. You're going to Canada.
Somebody want to get
Nora,
her.
listen. This is his choice.
You stay away from me.
Ma, I'm no better than the others who have gone. I feel like I need to.
You're not going. You can't.
For my poetry thing, I'm going to present this cheerful little poem I found by Stephen Crane. I think it's a great poem for our times because, you know, the war in Vietnam is definitely a righteous action, and so we need to celebrate war. Here goes. Do not weep, maiden, for war is kind, because your lover threw wild hands toward the sky, and the affrighted steed ran on alone. Do not weep, war is kind.
It's got angels, clouds, and stars.
I've been reading Mark's letters. In one, he mentioned Dover Beach. It's my mother's favorite poem. I'm going to recite it today for Mark.
Nora, I don't feel so good.
What's the matter?
I don't know, just achy. My stomach's a
Pray the
little
Lord
off.
my soul to keep pale.
I think I'm gonna go lie down.
Martha's coming with the baby later.
What about Jim?
They're having troubles again.
I'm gonna go lie down. Wake me up when Martha comes.
I pray the Lord my soul to.
The sea is calm.
Do not weep, babe, for war is kind, because your father tumbled in the yellow trenches, raged at his breast, gulped and died. Do not weep, war is kind.
Come on, Nora. Come on out.
For my poetry presentation, I found the selection by Walt Whitman. A vast similitude interlocks all spheres, grown, ungrown, small, large, suns, moons, planets, comets, asteroids. All the substance is the same, and all that is spiritual upon the same. All distances of space, all distances of time, all inanimate forms.
For a time, we will all feel alone without him. His wife, Nora, his daughter, Martha, and his many, many friends will all deeply feel his absence in the coming weeks and months.
Hi, Mom.
Hello, hello, hello. Let me see that baby.
Come here, little Robin.
She's asleep, finally. She cried all the way over until 10 minutes ago.
I won't wake her. Let me see. Oh, don't you want to say hi to Grammy?
Mom, don't wake her up.
I won't. I won't.
Where's Dad?
He's taking a nap. He said you should go wake him up when you got here.
Oh, I'll wake him up all right. This will be sweet revenge for all those mornings he wouldn't let me sleep in.
We won't really die.
Wake up, little Robin. You can sleep later. Say hi to Grandma. Daddy!
Well, Martha, we didn't know you were coming by tonight.
I've never needed an appointment in the past. Have you seen my mother? She's not in her room.
No, of course you don't need an appointment.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Where's my mother?
Well, you know how she wanders.
I've checked all the rooms.
Martha, I don't mean to alarm you, but Nora's lost.
Lost?
This happens now and then with patients.
The doors are supposed to be locked, I thought.
We have people looking out for her.
Out? What do you mean out? You mean she could be outside?
I'm sure they'll be back with her soon.
Well, how long has she been lost?
As I said, this happens with...
How long?
It's been a couple of hours since we noticed her missing.
Since you noticed, so she could have been gone longer than that?
It's possible.
Well, what do the police say?
We have people looking out for her.
You haven't called the police?
The director's been alerted. He's on the way.
The director? What the hell difference does that make? We need to find my mother. Call the police. Call the fire department. Everybody.
We didn't know you were coming.
You didn't know I was coming. Is that it? So you thought you could just keep this whole thing under wraps and go find her, and no one would be the wiser. Is that it?
That's not what I meant.
This may be just some other patient to you, some babbling old woman who has to be showered and put to bed on a schedule. But Nora happens to be my mother. Do you understand that?
Perfectly. I'll call the police.
Mom? Mom, wake up. Hi. I'm glad you finally got some sleep. How are you doing?
Jean?
I know. How many times did he mention that crazy cottage by the sea? I know, Mom. You need to get dressed for the funeral soon.
Where's the baby?
Robin's fine. Jim is with her.
You need to... You should...
Don't worry about us right now. Jim and I will work things out. Come on, let's get you dressed.
Hey, you, what's your name? Oh, come on, just tell me your name. What could it hurt? I'm Gene.
Nora, we need to go soon.
Who are you?
I'm Nora.
Nora? No, that's a nice name. Know something, Nora? I think you're just about the prettiest thing I've ever seen.
Nora!
How about taking a little spin with me? Come on.
Dashing through the snow.
Before I say the poem, I have to admit, I was kind of jealous of all the attention Mark was getting when he was in Vietnam. I wish I could apologize to him, and I want to tell my parents, too, that I'm sorry. This is Dover Beach.
The tide is full.
You come here right now! Mark, where is your sister? I needed you to watch her! Mark, where is Martha?
She's dead, Mrs. Blodgett. We shot her already.
And I shot you!
You did not. You missed me by a mile.
Mark, Elliot, Blodgett!
Yeah, Mom?
Where is Martha? What do you mean she's dead?
We shot her already. She's in her room. And she has to stay there for 3 minutes before she can be alive again and fight us again.
I want you to stop this game!
Oh, Mom, why?
Martha, come here!
We didn't really hurt her, Mrs. Blodgett.
Well, you're hurting me! Do you know that boys just a few years older than you are actually fighting a real war with real bullets?
Yeah, and when I get old enough, I want to go too.
Jack Wiggins, you don't know what you're saying! Come here. Come on, you two. Do you know what death is? Do you?
Yeah, it's when you stop breathing.
It's when you stop being. Forever. It's when your mother and your father and all your friends never get to see you or talk to you or hold you ever again. So when you boys run around and pretend that you're trying to shoot each other, it hurts me. Please don't do it anymore.
We won't really die, Mama.
We promise we won't, Mrs. Blodgett.
Go find Martha, will you? I want to see her. Martha's coming right now. Martha! Martha!
Mama, come find me.
Nora, Martha's gone. She got out of the tent somehow. She's wandered off.
Where is she? Martha! Martha!
Mama, I don't want to play hide and seek with Martha anymore. It's the only game she ever wants to play.
I need to. Papers.
Well, when are you going to be done grading your papers, Ma? Can I have Bob come over?
Not today.
But Martha bugs the crap out of me, Ma.
Language.
Sorry.
Do not weep, Aiden.
Mrs. Blodgett, I understand that you've come a long way and all, but I don't see how this is going to do you any good. You should probably just leave it alone.
We killed the 3 of them.
Look, Nora, I finished it. It spins, see? It's got angels, and clouds, and stars. You like it?
The stars. So pretty.
You do? I hoped you would. This is the closest thing I can get to a poem, I guess. You like it?
Jean?
Mother's heart hung humble as a button. Did you say your prayers?
No.
Why not?
Never mind, I'll say them.
Why don't you let me hear you say them now?
I'll say them later.
I'd like to hear them now.
Why now?
Because something about your tone tells me you're not planning to say them at all, and I want to make certain you do.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done.
Say a real prayer.
That is real. It's the Lord's Prayer, Ma.
I know what it is, and I know the way you were saying it, that it wasn't sincere.
What do you want from me, Mama? A real prayer for Mark? Is that what you're after? Dear God, please keep my holy son Mark safe from harm. Bring him home so I don't have to spend any of my time with my one rotten daughter, Martha.
Martha?
Dear God, if it by thy will, let Martha go to Vietnam and just bring my better child home safe, will you? Is that what you want me to pray for, Mama? Is that the deal you're at from God?
Martha, stop now!
Dear God, if you must take one of my children, let it be the girl!
Stop me now!
I keep praying that something will break over here. Something. It seems like there are only 3 things for sure right now. Heat, confusion, and boredom.
I got you!
I live with those every day.
It's his choice, Nora.
They still haven't issued us rifles yet, but I hear they will soon, just before they ship us out to Phuoc Vinh. The fighting's supposed to be really heavy over there.
I've got a bazooka!
For now, all we do is play cards and have knife-throwing competitions.
You missed me by a mile!
Jack Wiggins, you know what you're saying!
All souls, all living bodies, though they be ever so different or in different worlds, all gaseous, water, vegetable, mineral processes, the fishes, the fruits, all men and women, me also.
Martha!
It's all right. Honey, it's just the kids playing with some firecrackers.
The children, are they hurt?
No, Mark and Martha in the backyard playing with some sparklers. It's all right. It's just kids having fun.
You have to stay dead for 3 minutes.
Come see the treehouse.
All right, settle down, settle
You know,
down.
I think about how you used to be in class. You know, when I was your student, it must
Mr.
have been really weird
Finnegan,
having your
have
own
a
kid in
seat.
class.
Now I want to share a poem with you today. Yes, another one, of
To tell you
course,
the
another
truth,
one.
most of the guys, even myself, I have to admit, thought that you were pretty
Poetry
crazy going
is
on like
life,
you did about poetry.
ladies and gentlemen. It is the expression of human desire. Without poetry, we
You acted
are
like you could save the world.
nothing.
I can't remember this, Miss Blodgett.
We slowly drove. He knew no haste.
Oh yeah, and I had put away my labor and my leisure too for his civility.
You have to answer the door.
Nora, we need to go soon. We passed the school where children played at wrestling at a ring. We passed the fields of gazing grain. We passed the setting sun.
No, don't you dare!
Get you.
Don't you
I'm
dare!
gonna get you.
Mama!
I am the tickle monster. I am the tickle monster. What is going on in here?
Daddy, he was tickling me.
Stop tattling, Martha.
Well, you were.
Listen, you two. If there's going to be any tickling done around here, I'm going to do it. Dad, stop.
You may feel as if you can't go on. In those moments, though, God wants us to call on him. God desires that we come to him, that we find peace in his bosom. He will lift our burdens if you will but surrender them to him. Nora, Martha, do not attempt to hide your grief. Do not let pride or vanity have a place in your hearts.
I want to be a worm this year, Mama. Can you make me a worm?
Open yourselves up to your Lord and Savior at this time of mourning, and let him provide.
I could never understand why your poetry mattered so much, Ma, but over here, all of a sudden it matters.
We paused before a house that seemed a swelling of the ground.
When I'm on watch and there's nobody to talk to, and my eyes start playing tricks on me, so I think I'm seeing ghosts, or during the times when, there's nothing to do.
The roof was scarcely
I wish I had some
visible.
poetry in my head.
The cornice but a mound.
Just some good, important words to keep me from cracking up. Sure, there are a lot of words around here, but most of them, they're just
'Tis
grunts,
centuries then,
shouts, complaints about the heat,
but
the
each-
grub.
But each... I'm done. That's it. That's all I can remember.
Dover Beach. That's the one poem you always wanted me to learn by heart. I never got much of it down, but I remember this one part where it says, "For the world which seems to lie before us like a land of dreams, so various, so beautiful, so new, hath really neither joy, nor love, nor light, nor certitude, nor peace, nor help for pain." Those are some good words. I just wish I could remember the rest.
It's got angels, clouds, stars.
Mother, where are you going? I'm going to pick a mock from the soccer game. And how are you going to do that? I'm going to go take the car and go get him, silly. But, Mama, you haven't had your license in years. Remember? After Dad died, you stopped driving. And Mama, Mark has been gone.
Don't answer that!
Don't answer what, Mama? The door. Don't let them in!
We have to let them in, Nora.
No, don't open the door! We'll kill them! Kill them!
He's already gone. He's gone.
Don't open it!
He's
Please
already
don't open
gone.
it!
It is my sad duty to inform you,
No!
Mr. and Mrs.
Mother, whose heart hung humble as a button on the bright, splendid shroud of her son. Do not weep. War is kind.
It's so cold. We have to find her.
We're doing everything we can.
We need more searchers. Shouldn't we have people, arm in arm?
We should get everyone in the camp together.
We should make a line.
No, Nora.
Mrs. Smith, how many people will trample clues?
What are we going to do?
Did you find her yet?
Mark, what are you doing? You should be
You
asleep.
should be asleep.
I
want to
help. Mark, we can't have you traipsing around and getting lost too.
We need to be careful that the searchers don't end up lost.
Please, just stay here for a minute. Don't leave.
But it's so cold.
Mom, we'll find her.
We'll find her.
It's okay. We'll find her.
Pray with me, Mark.
All right, Mama.
Maybe we should say a prayer.
Mom, we don't.
I know we don't normally, but Nora used to pray, though. We have to do something.
Oh, most kind Father in heaven.
God,
Watch over Martha.
Nora.
Keep her safe.
Help us find her.
Please.
Mama, you gotta come save me. They're coming, they're coming.
No, Miss Blodgett, I didn't finish the Pledge of Allegiance. Well, yes, I know the school requires it. I understand if you have to turn me in. I couldn't say that part about one nation, under God.
Mama, you gotta come see my treehouse. I put a rope on it so I can climb up it and down it, and Martha can't even come up.
Mama, that's no fair. I want to go up. I want to go up.
You can't. Tell her she can't, Mama.
Tell me about how he died. Were you there?
Mrs. Blodgett, I don't think you want to.
Listen, Henderson,
You hear the
Bill,
grating roar.
I traveled many miles
The
to
pebbles
meet
which the waves draw back
talk
and
with
fling.
you. I know
as they
exactly
return
what I
up
want.
the high
I
strand.
don't mean to be disrespectful,
Begin
ma'am,
and
but
cease,
I don't
and
see
then
how it's
again
going to do
begin.
you any good.
I dreamed, Bill.
Horrible dreams
about Mark.
Save me.
About him dying. I need the truth, no matter what you tell. It can't be as bad as what I've been dreaming.
Sophocles long ago
I don't want to
heard
do
it
this.
on the Aegean, and it
I'm
brought
sorry
into
to
his
have to
mind
ask you.
the turbid ebb and flow
I'm
of
sure it's
human
not
misery.
easy for you to recall.
The enemy, they hung him in a tree.
Mama, you see
In
my
a tree?
treehouse.
Why was he in a tree?
They used to do that.
Sophocles long ago
After
heard it
it
on the
was
Aegean, and it brought into
death?
his mind the
Sometimes
turbid ebb
after,
and flow of
sometimes
human
before.
misery.
And Mark's body had that.
No, we got there just after they'd hung him up there. We killed the three of them that did it.
Was Mark still alive?
Please
tell me
We
the truth.
Yeah,
find also
he
a
was
sound,
alive.
a
Just
thought,
barely. He was
hearing
shot
it
up
by
real
this
bad.
distant
Lost a
northern
lot of
sea.
blood. We tried to get him down from the tree. We tried real hard, Mrs. Blodgett, but he was so tangled up in that tree. He was dead before he could come down.
I see. Did he say anything?
No, I'm sorry.
The sea of faith was once too at the full and round earth's shore, lay like the folds of a bright girdle furled.
When are you just going to say it, Nora?
I don't know what you're talking about.
You hint at it. You drop little hints and bits of poetry that you think I don't understand.
Now
Jane,
I hear its
I'm tired!
I'm tired too, Nora. Tired of being a criminal in my own house.
What is your crime, Jean? Just what do you think your crime is?
You think I helped kill Mark?
I never said that.
Not right out, no, but every
I
time.
never said it, and you're feeling it. Then maybe it's your crime
Don't
to
you
tell
try
me
twisting this around on me, Nora. Don't you do that to
I'm
me.
not doing anything to you.
He was
Jean.
my son, too.
I never
He was
said
my
he
son
wasn't
just as
your
much as
son.
yours.
Then why and how did you let him go to Canada? Why did you let him go to Vietnam? Why? You knew what was happening over there. I told you he should go to Canada. You could have made him go, Jean. Why did you make him go?
It was his choice, Nora. I couldn't stop him.
You stay away from me. You should have made him go. I wanted him to go to Canada.
I miss him something awful.
You should have gone. You should have gone.
retreating to the breath of the night wind, down the vast edges drear and naked shingles of the world.
Nora, it's all right. You're cold. You're cold. It's all right. That's it, Nora. That's it. You're cold.
Did you find her, Mama? Did you find Martha yet?
Nora!
Nora?
Nora!
Ma, they're all around us. Come over here.
Nora! How long can I say she's been out there? Nora!
All right, Mama, you stay here. I've got to go find Martha.
Are you going to turn me in because I didn't finish the pledge? I couldn't say that part about one nation under God. I mean, under God? Over there in Vietnam, I hear we're killing children. Under God, Mrs. Blodgett? Under God?
Not lucky yet, honey. I'm really getting... Nora?
She's a kitty.
What?
She likes to get way down under the covers and curl up in a tiny ball. Sometimes I can hardly find her in the morning.
Nora, I don't think I
I'm gonna
understand.
check the tent again.
All nations, colors, barbarisms, civilizations, languages, all identities that have existed or may exist on this globe or on any globe all lives and deaths, all of the past, present, future.
I'll be damned.
Here you are!
She's been here the whole
This
time.
vast similitude spans them and has always spanned them and shall forever span them.
What's the matter, Mama?
Nothing, sweetheart.
Nothing's the matter.
And compassion
damn.
filled them and enclosed them.
She was here all the time.
Nora, I'm not feeling so
Jane, what's
good.
the matter? Mama, come find me. Confused alarms of struggle and flight. Your ignorant armies flash by night.
One another. Let us be true to one another.
This year. Mama, I want to be a unicorn. Can you make me a unicorn? Can you please? Somebody's here for you, Mama. Jean, come see.
What's
Look at Martha. Look at her staying near mobile. She's entranced.
Can't take her eyes off it. I'm surprised it's even survived all these years.
She's so tired.
Should have put a music box in it.
No, this is good. Look at her. My baby's so tired. Is Mark asleep?
Yeah, he's out. Look at that. Doesn't want to close her eyes. Doesn't want to miss anything. Doesn't want to go to sleep. It's okay. It's okay, baby. Go to sleep now, baby.
Nora? Nora, it's time. That's it, Nora. You fought so hard for so long. But it's okay to stop now. It's okay to let go. No one will be upset. You're so cold, Nora. You're so brave. Thank you, Nora. It's time. You can let go.
You know, television is usually a lot more entertaining if you turn it on. Listen, I couldn't ask you at the funeral, but I was looking at the photo albums you set out of Grandma Nora. Ma, you know the ones I'm talking about.
Yes.
Tell me about her.
I know you're trying to make me feel better, Robin, but...
Look. Who's that? Is that Nora? Hi, Mom.
Hi.
Is that Grandma? Is that you she's holding?
Yes, that's Nora. And that's me she's holding.
All right, I think we are ready to transition. I'll be perfectly honest with you, for people who are outside the theater world and the theater realm, I hope your teachers gave you an idea of what to expect this morning, but the show is incredibly impactful, and we wanted to do something more than just go to festival and perform. We wanted to see how that we could make a community connection and begin a real discussion and dialogue. For me, it was my grandmother. And my grandparents used to live with us when I was much younger. And I remember I'd heard about the word dementia. I saw some of her signs and symptoms, but it was until I did this show that I fully began to understand and have a deeper understanding and perception of what went on when I was a child. I'm going to introduce our moderator, Bernie Seifert, and she is going to kind of guide us through the morning and introduce our panel. Some of our panel got a chance to see a rehearsal on Tuesday, so that was nice for them to come kind of get a taste of what this show and the impact that it possibly could have. So would you please welcome to the stage Bernie Seifert and our panel.
Good morning. I have to say I'm glad I came here on Tuesday to see the rehearsal, because this is extremely, very, very powerful play. And Dr. Pollock was saying, you know, he hadn't seen it on Tuesday, and he said, "Are you kidding me? I've got to talk now after this? We need to do grief counseling." This was, you did a wonderful, wonderful job. So I received some questions from several of you, and I'll read out a few of them now. One of the biggest questions that came up was, what is the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia? So I wanted to put that out there. Several of you had that question. So I wanted to put that out there so that the panelists could address that. Let me introduce the panelists. We have Dr. Eric Pollock, who is a family practitioner in Concord, and he's also a hospice doctor. And we have Melissa Grenier from Alzheimer's Association, and she's still wiping away tears. I shouldn't be laughing. Okay. And we have Jennifer Breckel from she's a social worker at the Visiting Nurses Association. And then we have Marjorie Burke, who is a caregiver, or some people refer to caregivers as care partners. So we will start with Dr. Pollock.
Good morning. Do you mind if I sit down? I didn't have the opportunity of seeing the pre-screening on Tuesday, and on the one hand, I'm really sorry about that, because I'm kind of a puddle now, and it's hard to talk to a group of people you don't know when you're a puddle. It's hard enough when you're not a puddle, but I'm a puddle. So the first thing I want to do is thank the cast for one of the more powerful performances I've ever seen. It was extraordinary. It was, it evoked in me memories of dozens, if not hundreds, of patients whom I've served over the years with dementia. And it sort of made me a little bit embarrassed, because in my professional role and in my personal role, I was all of those people that you depicted at different times in my professional and personal life. Meaning, there were times when I was coldly clinical, when I would talk about the neurofibrillary tangles and talk about the different medicines that can be used. And there were times when I was emotionally present, a human being, seeing the human being in the person who was sitting across from me, potentially taking their dress off if nobody was keeping a close enough eye on them, and everything in between. It evoked a number of emotions in me that I've experienced over the years, and it's such a gift to be given the window back into my emotions when I experienced things either for the first time or for the 50th time, because when you experience something, as the cast depicted, sometimes it reflects what the person's intent is towards you, but more commonly, it's a window into your own emotions and your own experience and your own feelings that come from somewhere in your past. So that window that the cast gave me was truly a gift. There are emotions that I'm really happy that I had because they spoke to my better angels and they remind me of good work, good interpersonal connections that I've made. And they're embarrassing because they remind me of times when, for whatever reason, I was more distant, I was more closed to the emotion of the moment, either because maybe that's what the person needed, or more likely it's because what I needed in that moment. So I came prepared to talk about dementia and Alzheimer's disease and some science and some statistics and how does it happen, and I'll speak maybe for a minute or two about those things. But after a performance like that, I think it's more important to connect as human beings about what I saw as the one of the prime messages of the presentation, which is, we're human beings, she was always there. The connection between looking for a young child who was always there and looking for a woman who had dementia who is always there, despite outward appearances, was, I think, the most powerful takeaway message for me. So thank you for letting me wax non-poetically about emotions, but I'm so grateful for the opportunity. So people asked, what's the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's disease? Very briefly, dementia is the broad term defining things that go wrong with your brain. You can't remember so well, you can't organize so well, you can't do your daily tasks so well as you could before. One of the problems is, I'm getting older myself, and everybody who has Alzheimer's disease or other forms of dementia starts with those sorts of things. There are some, for those of you in neuropsychology, there are some differences among the different kinds of dementia that I won't bore you with, but by and large, that's what happens to everybody. But I'm also here to tell you that's what happens to everybody else too. That I can't remember as well as I used to, and I can't organize as well as I used to, and I have patients come to me in their 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s say, I can't do those things. Do I have Alzheimer's disease? And in truth, I don't know. You don't know. There's no test to determine whether somebody has Alzheimer's disease. There's no biopsy. You can't biopsy their brain and look. You can do a CAT scan on somebody, and somebody with Alzheimer's disease has a perfectly good-looking brain, and somebody who doesn't have Alzheimer's disease, is a nuclear physicist, has a brain that looks all shrunken and different. There's no test to determine whether somebody has it. We go based on the clinical evaluation that we see. So when you see a parent or a teacher or someone else not remembering so well, have sympathy. It doesn't mean we have Alzheimer's disease, it just means we're human. But it could mean that once in a while some of us are on the slope downwards. There's not a great deal to do to prevent Alzheimer's disease other than taking good care of yourself. I mean, this is going to sound kind of simple coming from a doctor, but don't do drugs, don't drink a lot of alcohol, get exercise, eat right. The best medical knowledge that we have is that if you take decent care of yourself, you have less of a chance. Keep your brain active, learn new things, do what you're doing right now for the rest of your life, be lifelong learners. It's the best we know about how to prevent dementia or Alzheimer's disease. There are other medical conditions that can contribute to dementia. The vascular blood vessel clogging, like for example, if you smoke cigarettes or if you're diabetic and you don't take good care of it, and other things that can contribute to things like heart attacks can also potentially contribute to Alzheimer's disease. there were some other questions that really still feel dry to me. What I'd like to conclude by talking about for a moment is if you have someone, and I'll bet a large minority or a majority of us in this room all know somebody who's had dementia. But I guess the takeaway message for me is to remember that they're still in there, to know the person. If you are appalled, embarrassed, drawn to, angry, regretful, know the emotions that you bring to your interaction with the person, with whatever. And in fact, we could be talking about somebody with cancer, we could be talking about somebody with any other disease. It may evoke an emotion in you. And better than the wonderful depiction of the daughter who had an emotional reaction was, I don't want any part of that. To know that emotion beforehand and have a place to talk about it, to communicate about it, and put it out there where you can look at it and examine it rather than be driven to behave based on it, allows you to follow your better angels and behave as you would wish to behave if you were behaving like you wanted to behave. So I guess the takeaway is to reflect as well as you can, to know if you're in that experience. If you have an emotion that's driving you away or pulling you towards, examine it. Remember the person is still in there. And there are lots of strategies that other panel members can share with you about what can we do to actually connect with people who seem not connectable with. It can be very, very rewarding, and it can be challenging. So I think that's enough of the science. I think I gave 30 seconds on science. Was that enough?
Do all people with the disease experience delusions? So if you could answer that.
Yeah, well, first we have to talk about what a delusion is. And I have to tell you before I continue that I have 3 cardinal rules when I speak to audiences. 1, put your suit on, your wedding suit, or the thing I never wear. It shows respect for the people you're talking to, so I did that. 2, know the subject material. I didn't come to the pre-screening and I wasn't prepared for that emotional intensity. And 3, know your audience. I'm 1 for 3. I was told when I got here that there's a wide array of knowledge in the group that's sitting here, that there are freshmen with very little experience and knowledge about things that we're talking about, and there are seniors who are neurologically gifted. They know a lot about what's happening in the brain. And so I'll just briefly tell you what a delusion is. A delusion is a thought that isn't true in reality. And no, not everybody with Alzheimer's disease has delusions or hallucinations, which is when you see or hear something, you sense something that's not there. But it's common, and it's one of the more difficult things to experience when you're talking to somebody who's not in the present, seeing things as you see them. One of the most challenging things as a family member, a friend, as a caregiver, a partner, is to go where they are and to change the relationship from one where you are either taken care of or co-equally taking care of each other to one where you have to rise above and say, okay, I'm not going to convince this person that that's blue. I'm going to go where they are and meet them and commonly unfold richness of communication and moments, glimpses of the person that you remember coming back out again, as again was so beautifully depicted in the show.
Quick question for you, Dr. Pollack, is do people with dementia, why do they remember some things and not others?
I wish I knew the answer to that, but very commonly people can remember distant memories really, really well and can't absorb new information. It probably has something to do with the nerve connections in the brain being disrupted by Alzheimer's disease. There are proteins that get deposited in the brain either as the cause of the problem or something causes the proteins and also causes the difficulty putting new thoughts together. But it's very difficult for people with evolving dementia to learn new things. But the memories from a long time ago become more intense. Again, I have to keep giving credit to the cast, did a wonderful job depicting how those memories can show up unbidden or bidden and define what the behavior or the emotion that you see is going to be. So not everybody has them. Not everybody who has them exhibits them. They may be happening deep inside their brain and you may not be able to tell, but it is a common manifestation of people with dementia.
Thank you. So I guess now we'll go to Melissa. Melissa Grenier is from the Alzheimer's Association, and Melissa is our numbers lady. She knows a lot about the research and numbers related to Alzheimer's. And there's a couple questions here I want to read out so that you have. And one is, what are the most common advances in dementia research and treatment? And the other, which is a very interesting one, and it's asking, do animals get dementia or Alzheimer's? So, Melissa.
And certainly working with animals is not my forte. I work with humans. But based on my some interesting research that's been happening recently is that the fact of the matter is there are some species that do develop dementia. And in fact, I was just looking at something within the past couple of months that was discussing research of some beached dolphins off the coast of Spain that they analyzed their brains and were showing evidence of the plaques and tangles that Dr. Pollack had mentioned. Those are the substances that build up in the brain that we feel are related to the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease. So they're studying those right now. So beyond that, I'm afraid I don't have a good answer, but there are some species that can develop dementia. So I'm glad that some of you are interested in knowing the research related to Alzheimer's disease because it continues to go on and on and on. And so to give us a little bit of a background as to why that's so important, I wanted to give you some statistics that I think will help frame how devastating of an issue this is in our country and in our state right now. So right now in the United States, we have over 5 million people who are living with the disease, are living with Alzheimer's disease. And right here in the Granite State, we have 24,000 people living with Alzheimer's disease. And in New Hampshire, 30% of those 24,000 people are living alone, based on a survey that was done last year. So that's very concerning because we have a lot of people who are having trouble with their functioning, with their thinking, with their memory, and yet they're living alone, which means that they're at a very high risk of self-neglecting, not taking good care of themselves. So just to give you some more, just a few quick statistics, and I made sure to jot them down because I wasn't sure how I was going to react to the play that we just saw. But in the time that it took for us to watch the play, about 60 to 70 people developed Alzheimer's disease. So every 66 seconds, actually maybe a little bit less, but every 66 seconds, someone develops Alzheimer's disease in the United States. So that's really devastating because as we go through our day, more and more people are developing this disease. And there are other forms of dementia. Alzheimer's disease accounts for over 60% of all dementias that get diagnosed. So if this auditorium holds, I heard somewhere around 400 people, if this auditorium was full and everyone in this room had some form of dementia, more than half of the folks in this room would have Alzheimer's disease as that specific type of dementia. The other thing that I always find interesting and that I try to pay attention to is the fact that I'm sure you're all aware that in the United States, we monitor the top 10 causes of death in the United States. Alzheimer's disease is the number six, the sixth leading cause of death in the United States. And it is the only top 10 cause of death in the United States that continues to rise at an exponentially high rate, whereas all the other causes of death are decreasing over time: cancer, heart disease, so forth. So we've got a real issue on our hands, and that's why it's so important that we continue to do research, continue to advocate with our local, state, and national legislators, because they're the ones ultimately that make the decisions, that give the okays for research dollars to be allocated to certain places. And so, kind of shifting gears to talk about the research a little bit, I wasn't, again, because we have a mixed audience, I think it's really important to just note that clinical trials, research studies, terms of that nature tend to be used interchangeably, but they mean virtually the same thing. There's lots of different types of research studies that are going on right now. Some of them are to test pharmaceutical interventions, so medications or injections to help people that are living with symptoms of Alzheimer's disease. Some of them have to do with lifestyle choices, which I'm glad you mentioned, because there are a number of preventative research studies going on right now that look at how we can modify our lifestyle choices like nutrition, activity, cognitive engagement, meaning exercising our brain, and socialization. So I'm willing to bet that all of you students in this room are very good at socialization. And so I think you can check that off your list. And that's a wonderful thing. You know how important your friends and your network is. And so that is going to be even more important as you get older and want to maintain your brain. So a couple of things that I thought would be interesting to mention are, can you hold this, Jen, for me? Thank you. There is one study that I really tend to pay very close attention to, and it has a funny name. Lots of these medications that are being researched have funny names, but there's a medication that is in phase 3 of 4 phases worth of trials. It's called aducanumab, and no, you don't have to remember the name of that, but just know that it's a pharmaceutical medication that is being researched by a company in Massachusetts called Biogen, and they're seeing some pretty good results with that. It wouldn't have made it into phase 3 trials, meaning, pretty significantly through the process to be approved to come to market if it hadn't shown positive results. And when I say positive results, I mean that folks that are participating in that trial have to go in monthly for an infusion. They're given this aducanumab, and that medication, the goal of that medication is to bind with the plaques, that gunk that builds up in the brain that Dr. Pollack had mentioned. It's supposed to bind with that and decrease the amount of that substance in the brain. And what they're finding now is that is happening. And people, if we have less of that kind of gunk buildup in our brain, we're seeing less issues with people and their functioning on the outside. So on the outside, you're seeing people, we saw Nora having trouble remembering, having trouble, she was lost, she got lost, she wandered, couldn't find her way back. On the inside, what you'd see, if you were to look at someone's brain, is you would see that there's a lot of atrophy, there's lots of holes in the brain has shrunk. And when we lose brain mass, we lose brain function. So on the outside, you're seeing someone who can't speak, who can't remember. On the inside, you're seeing actual biological changes happening in that person's brain. And so what this study is doing, aducanumab by Biogen, what they're doing is they want to decrease that buildup of that substance that can really continue to build up in the brain, and that's where we see the decline in someone with Alzheimer's disease. The other thing I want to mention is that, I have a few examples of those types of studies, but I yawn. I don't want to bore you with all of them. I will say that there are a lot of studies that fail, and those studies actually teach us quite a bit. It's not like billions of dollars are spent on this and people participate and there's nothing that's learned from them. So there have been a number of studies by huge pharmaceutical companies that have failed recently in the past 12 to 15 months. And although the Alzheimer's Association is saddened by the fact that they've failed, we're also hopeful that those failures have given us lessons about where to move forward in the future, if that makes sense. So in terms of what progress has been made, although current drug therapies only treat mildly the symptoms related to Alzheimer's disease, researchers have a lot of hope that in the near future we will have those treatments that can stop or slow down the progression of the disease. And we have to, because right now we have over 5 million people. By the year 2050, we're looking at 15 to 17 million people in the United States with this country, in this country with this disease. So the Alzheimer's Association works, again, on a local, state, and national level to advocate for people living with this disease, but also their caregivers and care partners. And we do a lot of public awareness and education, and I think that that helps people know, helps people understand that even Alzheimer's disease exists and that it relates to our brain and memories, if nothing else. The one other thing that I just wanted to say is that we saw Nora really advanced. When we saw her with symptoms, we saw her as a person very advanced in the disease process. And I want to let you know that there are likely people you are coming into contact with all the time that have mild symptoms of Alzheimer's disease that may not have even been diagnosed yet, or have been diagnosed but are still living very independently, and they're living, a very engaged life. So there's a lot of life to be lived with a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease. And I say that, and that might be the first time you've heard that or kind of thought about that, but having Alzheimer's disease, especially if you're lucky enough to get diagnosed early and accurately, gives you the time to do things, might kick you in the butt a little bit, gets you to do things that you may have waited a lot longer to do, gives you time to plan for the future and to take into account and create that care team, which almost, I feel like the panel here is almost a little microcosm of a support system here that we could be for, say, Nora or someone like her. And so I just say that because Alzheimer's disease is a long, progressive decline. And unfortunately, we do not currently have a survivor of Alzheimer's disease. But I think by the time that you are adults, have your own families, that we will be having a whole different conversation. And so thank you for letting me participate. And I also just wanted to mention that the Alzheimer's Association, although it's a nationwide organization, we do have an office in Bedford, New Hampshire, and some of our services are for people living with the disease, of course, supporting their loved ones and their care partners, but we also do trainings for healthcare professionals, law enforcement, fire and EMS, and we love to come to speak to students because you're the future, and again, thank you for having me. And what I'd like to do now, I've got a friend, is pass it over to Jen Brechtel, and she's going to talk to you more about the other community supports outside of the Alzheimer's Association that can be helpful.
Could I ask just one question that maybe you know or maybe others on the panel know, and that is, do more women or men have Alzheimer's disease?
That's a great question. Yeah. So more women develop Alzheimer's disease. We used to only think it's because ladies lived longer, but what they're now looking at through research is that there may be other factors, hormonal factors, and other factors that contribute to the fact that Alzheimer's disease affects women more. And more women are caregivers as well. So women are affected more in every way by this disease process.
Okay. And Jennifer? And Jennifer will talk a bit about, I think some of the, we heard about a lot of negative things about related to Alzheimer's. There are some positive aspects. Jennifer can probably talk about some of the programs that really speak to some of the positive pieces of Alzheimer's.
Good morning. So I always like to follow Melissa because she does a nice kind of segue, and then she reminds me of all the statistics that I often forget. So when you think about it as a nation, if we've got over 5 million people living with Alzheimer's or some form of dementia, and even on the state level, we've got 24,000 people, it's important as a community that we find ways to support these individuals to maintain their quality of life. And I'm talking about the person living with the disease, but I'm also talking about their caregiver or their care partner. So I think in Concord and in the capital region, we've done a really nice job kind of coming together organizationally to put some great programs in place. And I think, talking about the Alzheimer's, just being aware of all the great work that they do on the national and the state level for people and their caregivers living with the disease is important. So knowing, if you're someone who's caring for an individual with Alzheimer's and dementia, there can be opportunity or times when you're not sure what to do. You don't know how to handle a situation. So the Alzheimer's Association has a 24/7 hotline where people can call any time of day, 365 days a year, and get their questions answered, get guidance on how to handle maybe a behavior or a symptom that their loved one's experiencing. So it's those types of resources that we're fortunate to have here in the state and also at the national level. And there's lots of opportunity for people to meet with individuals to help kind of come up with their plan. So, Melissa talked about the idea that once you're diagnosed with Alzheimer's, there's, depending on when your diagnosis comes, there's still plenty of life to live. So reaching out to those community resources is an important part. So you can, through the Alzheimer's Association, they have care consultation where you can sit with a staff member and kind of learn more about the disease and what's available for resources to you. Here at the state level, we have Service Link, which is a wonderful resource, and they have individuals in their office who can meet with caregivers and really help them come up with an effective plan, kind of thinking about the long term, because like Melissa said, Alzheimer's isn't a disease that's going to get cured. It's something that the family is going to live with forever, and it is going to progress as the person ages. So kind of coming up with that plan early is really important, and Service Link is a great resource because they really know what's available in our state and can help kind of set people up for to maintain their quality of life and the ability to do the things that they want to do. Caregiver support groups are great because it provides those family caregivers, and Marge might talk about this as well, but it provides those family caregivers opportunity to kind of surround themselves with individuals living with the disease and have very open, candid conversations, which, as you can imagine, being a caregiver for someone living with Alzheimer's and dementia, that's really helpful to be able to sit in a room with people who aren't going to judge anything you say and really accept what's going on in your life and help you find solution, because there's always knowledge or power. What's the saying? There's power in numbers is what I want to say. So the more people you can talk with and connect with about what's going on with the disease, I think is really an important piece. And a caregiver support group does something really important for family caregivers, and it allows them to maintain their own personal health and wellness, because it helps people to appreciate the idea that if I'm a family caregiver and I'm not taking care of myself, chances are I'm not going to do my care partner or my care recipient very much good if I'm sick or not feeling well or not doing things to take care of myself. And oftentimes those family support groups can really kind of push people to be able to do that and realize it's okay to take time to get your hair done or have lunch with friends or whatever is important to that particular caregiver. I think something else that is happening throughout the state, we have one here in Concord, is the idea of a memory cafe. Have people heard anything about a memory cafe before? No, I'm seeing some heads. I'm not seeing any heads going, yes, I have. So a memory cafe is actually, it's pretty cool. So it provides the person living with Alzheimer's, dementia, some type of cognitive impairment, and their family, their caregiver, their support system, an opportunity to come together with others living with the disease and experiencing similar circumstances. And memory cafes are done all kinds of different ways. Some cafes, everybody stays together. And so it's really just that opportunity to socialize, enjoy each other's company, have conversations. What we do here at the Memory Cafe in Concord is we typically offer 2 programs, and the reason why we do that is because we found through having conversations with our participants, it was really important for them to have time, the memory impaired individuals to meet and socialize with those living with memory impairment, maybe not with their care partner, in the room so they can kind of have open conversations depending on where they're at in the disease process. And for our caregivers, it provides them an opportunity to connect with professionals working in the field of Alzheimer's and dementia to get their questions answered, because there's no rule book when it comes to Alzheimer's and dementia. You know, this is Melissa's favorite line: if you've met one person with Alzheimer's, you've met one person with Alzheimer's. So, you know, it's important to be able to have those connections to professionals working in the field. So we spend a lot of time either working with the Alzheimer's Association or different professionals in the Concord area, physicians. We've had all kinds of people come, but really just providing that resource to those caregivers, which is invaluable to them. And the other part is we always do an activity for the person living with Alzheimer's and dementia. So we always make it a very meaningful activity. Yesterday we actually had our memory cafe and we made bread, which might seem kind of silly to some people in the room, but when you think about what goes into making bread and the senses that are tied to that, it's really important to engage people living with Alzheimer's and dementia. It's important to engage their senses. So, you know, we had to, knead the bread. Some people ate the dough before it got cooked, but we put it in the oven. Well, while it was cooking, we were in the country kitchen, so the oven was right next to us, and we could smell the bread baking, and that allowed people to kind of reminisce to past experiences in their life. So a memory cafe is a great thing, and they're happening throughout the state. There's one up at Dartmouth, there's one in Hanover, there's one at the Dover Children's Museum, there's one at the Currier Museum of Arts, there's some in some other skilled or assisted living communities, some libraries host them, so they're happening kind of everywhere, and it's really just a group of people getting together to provide an opportunity to engage individuals and their care partners who are living with Alzheimer's or dementia. Something else we do at our memory cafe, which is kind of fun, is we offer a program called Time Slips, which is it provides people who are living with Alzheimer's and dementia the opportunity to use their imagination. So really thinking about the idea, if I show Melissa a picture and she's, living with Alzheimer's, she's might not remember what's happening in that picture. She might not know what's happening in that picture. But what Time Slips does is it kind of takes that away and just allows Melissa to use her imagination to tell a story. So there's no right or wrong answer when we talk about time slips. It's really just asking open-ended questions to those individuals living with Alzheimer's and dementia to engage them in meaningful kind of activity. And it's really kind of cool. I should have brought a story to show you, but it's really kind of cool to listen to the stories that people come up with. We do ours in a group setting. And so as you can imagine, everybody's got a thought. And even people who historically have been not very verbal at the Memory Cafe, when we do time slips, they tend to engage more because there's no pressure for them. They don't have to remember. They can just kind of share what they want, and it's very kind of open. So it's a great opportunity, and you could do that, really anywhere. You just, if you see a picture in a magazine, you kind of start to have a conversation about it. What do you think's happening in this picture? What do you think that person's name is? What do you think it smells like on that beach? Asking those types of questions and taking the pressure away from remembering for a person living with Alzheimer's and dementia is huge, because then they can participate without the worry of being right or wrong, because I think we live in a you're right, you're wrong kind of world, and for them that's really hard. Music. Has anybody heard about music in relation to Alzheimer's and dementia? Some people have. Good. Oh, good. Oh, good. So this is right up your alley. So there's a couple programs in the state. Easter Seal has a program, Music to Remember. Is that what it's called? Music to Remember, where they actually will load MP3 players with music personalized to the individual living with Alzheimer's and dementia. And when you think about music, think about the emotions that are tied to music, right? Think about even your music, songs that have meaning to you. When you hear those, do you kind of come alive inside, right? That doesn't change for a person who's living with Alzheimer's and dementia. When you think about music and musical ability or musical appreciation, those are kind of the last two senses for an individual living with Alzheimer's and dementia that kind of fade away. So thinking about the value music brings to those people is really important. And it also oftentimes provides an opportunity for someone who's nonverbal to connect. Someone who's nonverbal, they might not communicate on a regular basis, but if you sing a song that had meaning to them in their younger years, oftentimes they might start to sing along, or they might even, start to tap their foot. So you can see them kind of engage with that music. And I read recently that the state, we were fortunate as a state to receive a grant. I think it was the New Hampshire Healthcare Association received a grant. And the purpose of that grant is to work with long-term care facilities in the state to provide MP3 players to individuals living with Alzheimer's and dementia. I think they're working with 74 facilities or so, don't quote me on that. And the goal is to have it implemented by, I think, March, maybe, don't hold me to that either. But really just the idea of training people to load these MP3 players and use them with these people to help if they're agitated. Having them listen to their music will calm their mood, or if they're feeling sad, that might be something that can help as well. So music is really neat. It's pretty fun to think about what we're doing at a state level in relation to music and memory, and I think the funds that the grant money came from CMS, which is the Center for Medicaid, and really I think the money came through fines and penalties that the facilities had paid to Medicare. So kind of that money coming back to us to support our community is pretty neat. And so, other things to think about when you think about what can we do as a community to support an individual living with Alzheimer's and dementia, I think it's that idea of making sure that quality of life doesn't change for that person living with Alzheimer's and dementia, and finding ways to support them in meaningful ways, and also thinking about that family caregiver and what can we do to support that individual, because it's important for those family caregivers to have an opportunity to get out and do the things that they want to do. And I think Marge will probably talk a little bit about this as well. So, what's available in our community? We've got adult day services, which are great because it provides that family caregiver with respite or the opportunity to get away. But also what an adult day is going to do is it's going to provide an opportunity for that person living with the disease to socialize and engage in those meaningful activities. We also have, in-home services. So if someone doesn't want to go out to an adult day and they can afford to pay privately, they can have non-medical care. There's tons of organizations in our area that are providing non-medical care to people living with Alzheimer's in their home. So their caregiver can sometimes be the wife or the husband or the adult child, whatever that is.
What's a day program?
So it's
I know what it is.
I know, I'm trying to say it in the most diplomatic way possible. So let's ask, what's a day program? So adult day program is someplace where a caregiver might bring their loved one to spend a day with trained staff, kind of like you think about when you bring your children to childcare, so you could go to work or go to school or whatever it is you're doing. The adult day is very similar, but it's focused on the adult. So the activities are different, but the concept is the same. And oftentimes they're staffed by nurses or LNAs or trained staff. So.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. I want to also mention, I think one of the things that Jennifer touched on is the music therapy. And if you want to Google the YouTube video of Henry, you could just Google Henry music therapy, and it's from the movie called Alive Inside, which I would recommend if you're interested in learning more about dementia. But it talks about the preserved abilities that people have who have dementia. And music definitely is one of them. I've worked with individuals who have been artists and have pretty advanced dementia and are still doing their art or still doing their music. And one of the things that I work at the Dartmouth Centers for Health and Aging, and one of the things that is offered up there is it's a choral for individuals who have dementia. So we have people in this group who can't even speak a full sentence, but you put them in with music and they can sing a full song. So it's really important for us to focus on helping individuals do what they can do. And so if you Google Henry Alive Inside Music Therapy, you'll be amazed. It's about a gentleman who's in a nursing home, and he can't really have a good conversation. He seems very, very into himself, and then they play music that from his era, that he used to be he worked as a musician, and he wakes up and he starts singing, and then he even starts talking after singing a few lines. You're able to have a conversation with him, so it almost like it wakes him up. So, and I've seen that myself when my father had dementia. So, just that's a very interesting thing to look into. And one of the questions that an individual had is, why take a career in geriatrics? And we have 4 individuals here who are very much involved. And you can do medical, nursing, social work, psychology. You can be a researcher. I mean, you can do biology and study the brain. There's a lot here for you to work with if you're interested in this area. So next I'd like to introduce Marge Burke. Marge is a caregiver or care partner. Her husband has dementia. And also Marge and her husband wrote a book recently. I wanted to make note of that, about their journey. So I want to go ahead, Marge.
Thanks, Melissa. I'm glad to be here. I've sort of recovered from the puddle I was in earlier, and I saw the play rehearsal the other day too. And I want to commend the cast and their director for a fantastic presentation. It was just all incredible, and you portrayed in reality of what it's like for somebody. And the girl who played Nora was great. I see people in that stage of the disease and they're lost. But deep down inside, deep down in where you dwell, are the memories that Nora was remembering throughout the play. They're still there. That person is still real, even though their memory has failed them. So I'm going to talk about what it's like to be a caregiver or a care recipient. And for a long time, my husband called me the warden. And then when he moved to a care facility, I became the wife again. So being a caregiver is probably the hardest job you will ever have in your life. It's harder than raising a child, because a child learns and grows up and remembers things, while a person with Alzheimer's or other dementias is forgetting. And they're not learning new things, they're forgetting old things. They don't remember how to get dressed, they don't remember people, they don't remember all kinds of things, except the long-term memories that are buried deep down inside. They're still there, and you can find ways to recall those memories and images and have meaningful conversations with someone with Alzheimer's. Being a caregiver takes courage, grit, perseverance, determination, patience, lots and lots and lots of patience. You're on 24/7. Even at night, you might need a baby monitor so that you can hear your loved one if he or she gets up and starts wandering in the nighttime. And it takes love, lots and lots of love. In our family, we call it big bunches of love. And it's a disease you can't handle alone. You need help. I think you've heard that from all the people up here. You need support groups, you need education, you need memory cafes. I was the recipient of some of that bread yesterday. My husband helped make it. I took some home, and I could hardly wait to get home because my car smelled so good. I want to comment a few things that we saw in the play. Early on, when Martha was talking with her daughter, Robin, about she was going to see Nora, she mentioned the fact that she felt guilty that her mother was in a facility. My recommendation is ditch the guilt. It's non-productive. What you're feeling is sadness and grief and sorrow. You shouldn't feel guilty that you have had to place your loved one in a care facility. I took care of my husband at home for 6 years until it became abundantly clear that it wasn't safe for either one of us for him to remain at home. I was worn out. He was calling me the warden. My role as wife had sort of disappeared. So putting somebody in a place where they can be cared for 24/7, and you're still the caregiver, but in a different way, helps the life of the caregiver or the care recipient. I took part in, I have a support group. I took part in memory cafes. At one memory cafe at the Courier Museum, one day the focus was on architecture and buildings. And my husband looked at a picture of the Colosseum in Rome. He's a retired building contractor. So he looked at the picture, and what did he say about it? What did he see? Oh, that won't pass OSHA. So his construction memories and experiences kicked in when he saw the Colosseum. So there are all kinds of rewarding moments like that can happen with your care recipient or your loved one. You have to work hard at it. One of the things that my husband and I did that was very helpful early on in his disease, which is something many of you might be able to do if you have grandparents with Alzheimer's, is to put together a memory book. We worked together over the story of his life with pictures. I did a lot of clip art from the computer to make it fun. I mapped out with street map of the town we grew up in, where he lived, where he worked, where we went to school. And those are memories that are still there inside. And then later on, if you're doing this with a grandparent, you can sit with them and go through the book and learn more about grandpa or grandma's life and what it was like, and ask questions, some of the things that Melissa and Jen were referring to. And that's so rewarding, not just for the person with the disease, but for you too. I've learned over the almost 9 years of dealing with my husband's Alzheimer's, 2 years of going from one doctor to another to find out the official diagnosis, 6 years of him at home, and now he's entering his 3rd year at Granite Ledges, just up the road here, that the relationships can deepen. My children and my grandchildren and I have come, and my husband have gotten closer together. Our relationship has deepened. We're able to have fun together in the midst of all this sadness and sorrow that we're dealing with, as the person that we're seeing is slowly slipping away from us, but the real person still lives inside. So don't be afraid if you have a relative that's suffering with this disease. Go and visit them. Engage them in some memory that you have of them when you were growing up. A couple of years ago, one of my grandsons, who was age 17 at the time, came up from Georgia to help me do some yard work. He adores his grandfather. And so I left him at Granite Ledges several times just for the two of them to visit. And he challenged his grandfather to a race. Now, this is an 80-some-year-old man who is very wobbly on a walker. And Dylan is pretty nimble. And it was pretty funny to see them racing down the corridor. But those were memorable moments for both grandpa and grandson. So don't be afraid to engage with people with Alzheimer's. And Dr. Pollack mentioned hallucinations. We went through a period of time when my husband had hallucinations. There were people in the house that were sleeping in his bed. There was a choir marching through the house. And rather than get upset, I said, well, tell me about them. What are they singing? Well, he couldn't tell me, but they were great. They were singing. And so for part of my own preservation, I gave all these invisible people names. I called them Clem, Clyde, Carlos, Chloe, Charlotte, and Clara. That was my own self-preservation. As a caregiver, you have to find ways of making it livable, whether you do it through humor or however else you take care of yourself. Now, as a caregiver, I am an absolute nag on the subject of caregivers taking care of themselves, whether they go to memory cafes or support groups, get themselves educated. You have to find time for yourself. When it became abundantly clear to me that I needed help, I hired an agency that provided in-home aides to come and spend 5 hours once a week with my husband so I could go out and do whatever I needed to take care of myself. And I called it Marjorie's Monday. And it doesn't matter whether it's not on Monday, it's still Marjorie's Monday because that was the day we started out with. And even though Donald lives in a facility now, I still try to honor that and make myself take time one morning or one day a week to just do what I need to do to take care of myself. No doctor's appointments, no grocery shopping, no going to meetings, just going out and having fun. Whatever I need to take care of myself so I can be present with my husband when I go to see him. Now, I think in the audience we have the chamber chorus present. That's what I was told. They were going to be here. And as Melissa said, Bernie said, Melissa's over here. Music is very important. The senses, the art senses are the last that we lose. So music, drama, poetry, which was so much a part of this play, it was so much a part of Nora's life. They're all very important, and they're the things that people with Alzheimer's remember. So the video Alive Inside is valuable. There's another video called Still Dreaming. It's about a group of residents in a nursing home putting on Midsummer's Night Dream. So there are all kinds of things like that in the arts that are available. And I'll bet that your chamber chorus could go to some of these facilities around the state and give a 10-minute concert singing some of the songs of the era of the residents of the home. If you play an instrument and you have a grandparent who's got Alzheimer's, go and sit with that person and play. Play something from their genre and see what happens. Engage them in conversation. Being a caregiver, whether you're the primary caregiver or the secondary one as a grandchild, it doesn't have to be gloomy. You can still recapture moments of happiness and pleasure. But you have to take care of yourself first. That's my motto, my nagging on people. You have to take care of yourself first.
Thank you, Marge. And what you're saying really brought up some memories for me. My father had dementia. He died, he was late in his 90s. He died a little over a year ago. But one of the things that I remembered is I spent a lot more time with him in the last 5 years of his life than I did even the last 30 years because I was visiting him a lot. One of the things that I used to do is bring him maple walnut ice cream because that was his favorite thing. And with people with dementia, oftentimes you have, the senses are good. So the sense of taste and the hearing and the music. He loved the ice cream, and I loved having ice cream with him. So it was a good thing. The other thing that I remembered is when my father, when I visited him, I put together two photo albums for him. One of them was for all the old black and white pictures from, we used to live on a farm, so all of them were way back pictures. And then a more modern book of all we're 7 children in the family, so a lot of grandchildren. So they're all recent pictures. Guess which one of the photo albums that he tended to look at and use more when people would come to visit? The black and white pictures, because as Dr. Pollack had said, the long-term memory is a little bit more preserved than the short-term memory. So he could tell stories and recount very specific details of his past life, but he really didn't recognize a lot of the recent pictures. So just something, the reminiscing piece, that's the one thing you can do. Have ice cream, play music. Those are things that you can do with people with dementia. And we have somebody who just walked up, and I want to introduce yourself.
Thank you. Yeah, hi, I'm Chuck Crush. I'm the executive director of the Birches at Concord, just down here on Pleasant Street. But before I get into that briefly, I'm also a member of the Concord School Board. And I want to just thank the cast on behalf of the school board, the staff, the administration, for an amazing play. I deal with this every day and have for a very long time. And on a personal level, my mom passed away at a young age from Alzheimer's. So it was so touching to just be engaged in the play. It was very rich. It was emotional. So thank you on behalf of the school board. Thank you for that. So now I'll put on my other hat and talk a little bit about. I'm the executive director of the Birches at Concord. We have 50 residents just down here on Pleasant Street. I would encourage you to come and visit anytime, because if you have any interest at all in seeing our residents have very rich lives, they're very engaged. We have residents who get the New York Times every day. We have residents who are at their end of their journey and we care for them. But the message is, and I'm going to be very brief, is, and I loved what the panel said, and so thank you, that because you have a diagnosis of dementia is not the end of your world. You can continue to have a rich life, and we also take care of 50 residents, but we take care of their families as well, because that's the commitment we make. And I learn something new from our residents and our families almost every day. So again, thank you to the cast, thank you to the staff, and thank you.
All right. Okay. I think we're about to wrap up. Is there any very pressing questions? Does anybody have any questions for the?
And by the way, they can be either a question that you have for our panelists. It could be a question for the cast members, because this has been a project that has been going on since we had auditions in October. Anyone at all?
No.
Staff members or kids? Right over here. Stand up.
Yeah.
Yeah, we want to hear you.
I'm up. Sorry. Dr. Pollack said thank you so much for letting him participate. He had to leave for a prior engagement. So great question. I get asked that by family members all the time. So the question is, why can people, so we already talked about how people can have more trouble with their short-term memory versus their long-term memory. So why is it that some people can remember something, say, in the morning and then not remember it in the afternoon, or remember something one day and not the next day? So I use the analogy of a flickering light bulb. If you think of a flickering light bulb, the connection and the electricity works some of the time, but not all of the time. Well, our neurons send electrical signals too. So think of the fact that if we have less neurons or intermittent neurons or brain cells, that if there's problems with those electrical signals, our brain cells aren't going to work as well as we want them to. So if you think of, again, back to the light bulb, sometimes the connections are there, sometimes they're not. And over time, those connections weaken so that there's less light and more darkness. And I only say that when we're thinking of one memory, because again, I really want to encourage us to think about living with some form of memory impairment as again, not the end of the world, that person's world. So the fact of the matter is that some people retain some of those connections for periods of time, but it is likely over the course of that person's disease process that those connections in certain parts of the brain will be lost. And so, but for a long time, some people can we call it waxing and waning. It's a little bit like a roller coaster sometimes. You could go visit grandma one day and she remembers your name, and a couple weeks later she may not, and then the next week you go visit her again and she can remember. So does that help answer that question about why people can sometimes remember some things on some occasions and not on others?
So just to add to that a little bit, so we have, and I'm going to use a fake name, we have a resident of the Birches called Sally, on the color Sally. And so Sally is very anxious. She's kind of at the end of her journey with her disease. Talked to her sons who had cared for her at home. They said she loves having a baby doll. So Sally loved kids. Children come in, come visit. She'd light up. I mean, she was spot on when children came in. But she kept her baby doll with her quite a bit, especially at lunch and breakfast and at her meals. So I was walking around, and I saw Sally sitting there with her baby doll. And I said, "Oh, how's your baby?" She looked at me dead on and said, "You know he's not real, right?" So sometimes I often wonder, who's challenged and who's not. But to that point, I called her sons, and a day later, her baby was her baby. So it is interesting. And for me, you know what? I spend more time just enjoying the people and their journey and where they're at. So thank you. I hope that helps.
Yeah, one other thing, when you go to visit someone with Alzheimer's, don't come up from behind and tap them on the shoulder. Go around to the front and speak directly to them and say, so they may have forgotten who you are. You might say, "Hi, Dad, it's me, Joe," or something like that, just to help them. It jogs their memory. And there are lots of baby dolls around at Granite Ledges, too.
I think we are about to wrap up, and I'm going to thank you very much.
Thank you. How about a hand for our panelists again? Thank you. So that you, the audience, can get an idea, our cast had the opportunity to not just perform, but today after, we had the opportunity to learn. And I can't thank our panelists enough for not only attending this past week, but also being with us today and informing all of us. I wish the statement that I'm about to say could be true. If I had a wish, my wish would be that nobody in this room would have to deal with dementia. But sad is the case that it's not true. And I hope that there is a day when we can all say that is true. So again, thank you teachers, thank you staff for coming, and we really appreciate it. Thank you.